and if you're dumb enough to put it on paper, we're gonna, fine you or challenge you on it, and there's gonna be repercussions. And you know, can somebody still think that way and still do a report and not document it? Yeah, it could happen. Yeah. But what we at least want to do is put the thought in your mind, hey, you know what? You said you weren't going to do this thing, so try not to do it. Now, in this specific example, there was literally a comment in there about a certain type of person in the neighborhood, okay, which we know is a red flag.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they put that in the report they sent. I didn't see that part, but they put that in the report they sent to the lender. Like they like.
Correct. And the neighborhood description, you're basically giving a description of what's in the neighborhood, and we don't put race in there.
Yeah.
But there are certain words that someone can use that is often,
code. Welcome back to House Rich, the first-time homebuyer show where we provide you actionable steps in layman's terms to buy your first home. If we're just meeting, my name is David. My background's in mortgage lending as a loan officer, mortgage underwriting, and as a realtor. I purchased multiple homes, but most importantly, I've helped hundreds of people like you in real life buy homes. Today is part 2 of the Black Appraisers Matter series. In part 2, we're breaking down, is there racial bias in the industry, from 2 Black appraisers who are part of the 2% of Black appraisers in the entire US. If you missed part 1, we go over how to become an appraiser, actionable steps, why it's so hard to get into the industry, what appraisers look for, etc. But let's get into the rest of the episode. Now I kind of want to segue into gentrification, potential bias in the industry, and just how an appraiser evaluates like new neighborhoods. So, often whatever city you're at, typically if it's a poor neighborhood, typically it's a minority neighborhood. Like I know, like in Dallas, like the poor area of Dallas is South Dallas. You go 10 minutes south of Dallas, the homes are like they're older, they're maybe $200,000. You go north 10 minutes, the homes are like much newer, they're $400,000, $500,000. But so now you see like people are starting to realize those areas are valuable. 10 minutes from Dallas is 10 minutes from Dallas. So you'll see like these brand new, homes popping up in like in neighborhoods with homes maybe 30, 40, 50 years old. So like in that scenario, like how are you evaluating, like how do you determine what those properties are worth to begin with? Because a realtor or builder just says, hey, this home is worth now $300,000, even though every other home within like a 3-block radius may be worth like $80,000 to $100,000. Like how are you evaluating those homes in transitioning neighborhoods?
So what we do, even in neighborhoods that aren't transitioning, but it's definitely the same in transition neighborhoods, especially, we're finding markets that are similar to our subject. Now, when we're doing an example of what we gave earlier, where the property is in a well-established neighborhood, that market is that neighborhood, because the features of the neighborhood are the same for the subject as it is for the comparables. In the example that you're giving, where there are no other similar properties to it, we have to go find a different market that has the similar features that my neighborhood has to offer. And really, we're trying to find, it might be 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 miles away. But what my neighborhood has to offer, I need to find another one with similar, comparable sales. Either they're going to have to be newer, because that's the example you gave. So it's really based on another area, but same market conditions as my subject. And so it's not just, okay, well, I like this sale. It was, a half a mile away. I like this number, so I'll use it as a comp. But if you're talking about, what the school district has to offer, what the neighborhood has to offer, those things really build into what a property is worth. What are the amenities of the county? Because you can have there's a neighborhood here. I don't know if you know about Cross Creek, neighborhood off of I-95. It's located in two counties. It's in Prince George's County, and it's also in Montgomery County. Now, this is one subdivision that's in 2 counties. The houses that are in County A are a huge difference from the properties that are in County B. But you're talking about the same subdivision. They have the same pool. they have the same streets, but now you're talking about school district. Now you're talking about other things that the county has to offer that county A doesn't have to county B. So we have to go find apples to apples. Price has nothing to do with it. Again, it's what are the features that our property has, and we have to go, again, as far as we have to find a similar market. And that's in the example that you gave, that's what we have to do as appraisers. So oftentimes, like with vendors, they'll have another neighborhood somewhere, and those are a little easier to use when you have, builders and hey, you could use this neighborhood because we know blah, blah, blah. Now, when you have just a one-off in a neighborhood, everything was built in 1900, but you throwing in a house that's built in 2023.
Yeah.
As a builder, you got to do your data. You got to do your research to say, you know what, I might want to sell it for 600,000, but if everything in my neighborhood is 250, why would you give me 600,000 in a neighborhood that everything else is 250? Again, you got to look at it as the average buyer. They're not going to do that. So the onus isn't always on the appraiser. Oftentimes the onus is on the builder. The onus is on the realtor. Don't set a price range that's really not, it's not in the market. So don't expect us to correct your mistake. And oftentimes, unfortunately, that's what happens. You set a bad price. Now you want me to go hunt for your bad price. That's not my job. My job is to say, this is what people in the neighborhood pay. You can sell it for what you want, but they're only going to give you $250 for it.
And so, sorry, excuse me. And so you mentioned like comparing like neighborhoods to neighborhoods, but often like what I see, and I'm sure it's every city. So like in the same example, I'm just going to say 10 minutes north, 10 minutes south, two different environments. But like, so in the area, typically 10 minutes south, the homes are older, so there's less like investment in the area. So like in South Dallas, it's like a food desert. There's not a grocery store within 20 minutes or 20 miles of certain areas. So typically you have like those food deserts, and then as a result, they're poor communities. Therefore, there aren't as many companies. There aren't as many like commercial areas moving there. And you kind of mentioned, the higher the property values, typically the better the school districts. And so, how are you evaluating that? Because it seems that in those scenarios, it seems hard, for my opinion, to find like a match. Like, how are you evaluating those factors that in that scenario?
I mean, literally, you have to go and find a similar neighborhood.
Find it. Okay. Yeah. You have to go as far out as you can.
Yeah,
you find those things.
To go further out.
Yeah, go ahead. And those are things called like linkages, and what we call in the industry. You have to be able to find properties that match your subject in terms of what your subject offers, and time, travel to public transportation, school districts, entertainment, shopping and stuff. Like, you have to be able to try to match up those things. And that's why an appraiser's job and the analysis that it takes, the amount of time that it takes, we're not just drawing a 2-mile radius and saying, okay, well, if it's in this radius, it's going to be exactly like the property. You have to be able to consider those things. Also, going back to what he was talking about, certain externalities. If there's negative externalities that come with the property, you have to try to find another comparable property to your subject that may have that industrial center that's like literally within eye distance, right across from your comparable. So it really is, it can be tedious, but we go as far out as we have to be able to find the data to be able to provide the proper findings.
Okay. And so I'm not asking you to this directly, but do you think like race plays a factor into appraiser's decision? Like, you think, like, what factor do you think, if any, if at all, like race plays into appraisers evaluation?
Jack, can I lead off with this, Jack, and you clean up because you're the designated hitter supervisor?
By all means.
Dave, I'll be first up on bat and everything. I'm just gonna try to get on first base with this one. I believe that humans are faulty by nature, but the responsibility for an appraiser in our USPAP code of ethics is to be impartial and unbiased, to be able to give a fair value for a property. And there's obviously issues with documented issues of redlining in the past. whitewashing that we've seen in national reports too. So has there been infractions in the past? Yes, I believe so. Even from my green trainee experience, I do believe that race in the past has affected certain property values. Now, do I believe that it is as much as is highlighted? I don't think so. I have a lot to learn, but that's why it's important to be able to make sure that we rely upon what the data shows in the past market. Because if I'm coming into a home and if I come in and you can, and not only from race, but also other things can be of bias too. I don't know, appraiser can walk into a house and they may, see all these Knicks jerseys around and be like, I'm a Lakers fan and everything, forget this guy, but no, just to bring a little levity to the situation. But has race played an issue in the past documented? Yes, because racism has been a part of this country and it has affected the real estate market, and communities have been proportionally disadvantaged from those in the past. I think that's why it's so important for not only for the advancement, not only in terms of analytics and technology, and training, but also what's most important is to get more diversity in this field. More diversity, because what's going to change the field is not necessarily as much in terms of educating people in terms of what to say and how to say it on reports and forms, which is helpful. But what's going to make the impact is getting people that are different in this field. And I believe that because it's been so dominated by a single race and a single gender, that there have been misappropriations and misvalues done to communities in the past.
Thank you. I'm a realtor in Dallas and would love to help you reach your goals of home ownership. So click the link in the description and just schedule a call no matter where you are on your journey. Not in Dallas? No worries, I can help connect you with a vetted realtor in your local jurisdiction as well. And feel free to share with friends, family, and foes. Everyone gets love. Did you want to chime in, Jack? Did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, when people hear the word bias, they scold their face or they think of something bad. And bias isn't inherently a negative thing. Bias just means that you think a certain way based on something. Now, you might have, like Devin said, you might have a bias against, you're walking in a grocery store and a person walking towards you, they have a Baltimore Orioles shirt on. Well, you might think something about this person because they have a Baltimore, maybe they live in Baltimore, or maybe they're a baseball fan. So it lends to what you think about a certain situation. Does it mean something negative? It doesn't mean something negative. Does it mean something positive? It doesn't mean something positive. But when people hear it in the appraisal space, they always jump to it means something negative. So as Devin stated, the code of ethics that we follow says that we do not take race into consideration. And so does every appraiser follow that code? No. Does every plumber follow every specific rule that plumbers follow? No. Does every male? So there's no, it's a flawed human feature that you're not going to take out of people. But we try to put things in place, either from government stances or you have your appraisal boards to try to steer us away from that. And the best way that you're gonna, a big part of doing that, including having laws on the books, is also having different thoughts of mind in the people who are producing the appraisal reports. Because the way that I think, looking at the exact same thing might be a different way that Devin thinks, but we're looking at the exact same 2x2 picture. How come he says left and I say right? It just depends on your background and how you grew up. And these things also can come into picture in doing appraisals. Just because I walk into a neighborhood and I happen to see a predominant race of people hanging outside, it should not factor into the value of the house, because that has nothing to do with the house.
Yeah.
The house has nothing to do with the people's pictures on the walls. We're looking at specifics of the property that we can pull from the market. And I can't pull from the market that this specific race lived in this house. I can only pull It's bedroom count, bathroom count, square footage, and I can also pull the location. Does the location have anything to do with race? It does not. Does it sometimes? Yes, it does, because we're flawed. But it should not come into the picture, and we are trying to keep that out of our industry, just like everybody else is trying to keep it out of their industry.
Yeah.
We're no different than, the plumber or, the delivery man.
Gotcha. Thank you. Do you have something else to add, Devin?
Well, and also too, how bias can go the other way too. I can't be. Let's say for an example, I can't, if it's a litigation, appraisal. If I'm going to a divorcee's house, and let's say I'm a divorcee, and then I feel sympathetic for that woman, or that man. It's like, all right, well, I'm going to try to, raise this value. See, that's also what you should not do. So, I think sometimes consumers, and this goes back to what Jack was saying, I think sometimes consumers, when they hear bias, the automatic thing comes to in terms of bias. And also on every UR/AR report, Dave, there is a box that checked that race or ethnicity did not play a factor into this appraisal. So that has to, like, every appraiser has to see that and has to actively check that box off. And the last thing I would say with that is that, if a consumer feels that they have been biased against, well, you know what? That's why you can be able to do, appraisal rebuttals, and there's boards that you can go to. But make sure you have data to back it up. Bring the data, because here's the thing with appraisers, like Jack said, we're not perfect. If you can bring a comp that matches the subject, that will, let's say, potentially raise the price $10,000, $15,000 more, and if you can have the data to support it and it's in line, then an appraiser should not have a problem with doing that, because corrections always have to be made in every industry. So I'm very glad that you asked that directly, Dave. And we just wanted to be able to bring a little bit more of a circumference view of how that bias can change forms.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know if you noticed I was kind of smiling, but it's because I was reading this article. It was actually an article you guys are featuring, the NPR article, and it linked to another article about there's basically a settlement over an appraisal issue where basically it was I think it was out in San Francisco, like the property was like for like $950, got it reevaluated at like 1.4 million. But I was reading part of course they don't disclose the whole settlement, but one of the quotes from the settlement said that the appraiser, is quotes, agrees not to discriminate in the future. Like what does that, I didn't understand what that meant. But is that what you meant? Is there like it was just a funny line in the article, like they agree not to discriminate in the future.
No, that's not
I was like, I didn't even know what that meant.
That's an odd saying, agrees not to discriminate in the future. Well, that's incriminating. Like,
yeah, it was just a weird blurb from the article. It was in quotes, so like that was part of the settlement. I just thought that was funny. I didn't know what that actually meant, or if there's some sort of, I didn't know what that meant at all.
No.
So there is a certification that we signed in the report that says, I will do and will not do certain things. And I think what they're referencing is, oftentimes in these reports, you will see documentation of somebody making a comment that is contrary to what you just certified that said that you will not do. They might put in there that there's a certain type of people in this neighborhood. And really, that's what they're saying.
Yeah.
Even if you think
that makes sense.
You were dumb enough to put it on paper. And now that you're dumb enough to put it on paper, we're going to fine you or challenge you on it, and there's going to be repercussions. And can somebody still think that way and still do a report and not document it? Yeah, it could happen. Yeah. But what we at least want to do is put the thought in your mind, hey, you know what, you said you weren't going to do this thing, so try not to do it. Now in this specific example, there was literally a comment in there about a certain type of person in the neighborhood, which we know is a red flag.
Yeah, absolutely.
So they put that in the report they sent. I didn't see that part, but they put that in the report they sent to the lender. Like they like
correct. And the neighborhood description, you're basically giving a description of what's in the neighborhood, and we don't put race in there.
Yeah.
But there are certain words that someone can use that is often
code.
use a code for, this specific type of person, this ethnicity, whatever. And those are the things that are a definite no-no in how we research our market.
Oh, okay, thank you. And so I had just a couple more questions. I know we're running a little long, but it's a lot of information. Thank you. So I
Yeah.
do want to read this this one report from Fannie Mae. So it said, in another groundbreaking study, researchers at Fannie Mae analyzed 1.8 million appraisals submitted for refinance transactions and found that appraisers were more likely to overvalue white-owned homes in majority Black neighborhoods. Moreover, the overvaluation could be attributed to appraisers relying on comparable sales from outside of the subject property's immediate area. And so they broke it down, basically saying that multiple factors was number one at 36.4%, and comparable locations 16.5% was the other determining factor in evaluating these properties. So it's kind of like what you pointed out, is that it seems like, and not, obviously it's not the whole industry, every industry has some sort of bias, but it seems like sometimes when white folks are moving to Black neighborhoods, certain appraisers will go out of their way to do what they should be doing for the Black folks, which is going and finding comparable sales outside of the property. So I thought that was an interesting stat because it's for like a refinance compared to like comparable sales. Sometimes with the purchasing a property, like there's a bunch of different factors, but I thought refinancing was very, very interesting.
Piggyback on that, actually, I have other colleagues in the industry, and we talk about this sometimes when we do review work. So basically, appraisals will often review another appraisal's report. Banks will often give you those assignments, and you can tell when somebody, is a term we use, hunting for the price. Now, the example that you gave, that's a perfect example of the opposite of what I said that you should do as an appraiser.
Yeah.
If you have sales on your street within a good time frame that are similar to your subject, there's no reason why you have to go out 3 miles for a comparable sale. Again, the value of the property should not drive your data, it should not drive your comparables. It's the criteria of your subject. And that's the huge red flag when I'm doing a review, when I say, okay, let me pull all the sales that are in close proximity to this subject and that I would consider are comparable. And then I see that you went, double the distance out for a sale that's over a year ago. Well, to me, that's a huge red flag. And oftentimes where appraisers are hunting for the price, you can find that.
Okay, thank you. And so one thing I saw, and obviously, once again, everyone has inherited biases, whether it's sports teams, race, it may not be something to think about, but everyone has some sort of inherent bias in there. That's just there. So one thing I looked at was technology playing a bigger role in the appraisal industry. Do you think that will help at all? Like maybe like stuff like desktop appraisals. I saw another article where they were, it didn't say where it was at, but they were like they had like trainees taking pictures of the property and appraisers not actually going to the property. Do you see any benefit in that, or have you seen that in the business or in the industry where you're at?
Well, actually, yes, we do see it in our industry. And just like with anything, there are pluses and minuses. I'll give you one of the negatives that can come up with overusing technology to value a property. When you're talking about a condition of a home, there's no technology that can tell me or can assess, walking through a property and knowing that, okay, you know what, these floors aren't level. When I look in this corner, there's a water spot. Then I look up in the ceiling and I see a water spot. Then, there are different features that technology can't put a fingerprint on.
Yeah.
Those type of things, you're going to have to somebody boots on the ground. Can technology always tell me the external features of a property? Yes, they can sometimes, but it's not always going to work. So there are benefits and there are also negatives. So technology molded or combined with the human element can definitely work. You don't want to use overly one feature as opposed to the other. So I think that definitely appraisers who are more up to speed on the different things that technology has to offer, like maybe using an iPad in the field, which can help you make sure that you have your data correctly in your sketch. like using a laser measurer, because sometimes human error can, we used to use the wheel, not that people don't still use it, but I used to use the wheel before. If I go over a bump, that might, hit my number 1 or 2 inches up or down. So is a laser measurer more accurate? Oftentimes it is. So there are different things technology-wise that you can use in the field. Of course, speed of producing reports with the application that we use just to write our reports. Those are helpful. So there are definitely pluses and minuses to technology in the appraisal space.
I can say as a trainee, I have found with, let's just even say even in terms of the laser, measuring laser, depending on how sunny it is outside. If it's really sunny outside, sometimes the laser is hard to be able to see and to be able to catch that area of siding of the house. So you might have to be able to be creative to be able to use more old school type methods to be able to get that actual measurement. So just to throw in a little tidbit, that, technology doesn't solve everything. But what's most important more so is to be able to have people of those different types of diverse backgrounds, and to be able to educate people in communities that don't know what we do, and know that Blacks are in this field, and Blacks, Latinos, Asians, any other minorities, that it's very much needed to be able to get the industry back to where it needs to be, or where it is, and keeping it and making it better.
Okay, thank you. And then one final question. I meant to ask a while back when you brought it up, but the appraiser, they don't look at the sales contract at all when evaluating the property to see the price? You mentioned
we do.
Okay.
We do, but it is a requirement for us to analyze the contract of sales, the properties on the contract. Because when you look through a contract, there might be something different in there. Is there, is the person throwing in $150,000 because it's my cousin? When you look at the names are the same. You're like, well, hey, these are family members. Maybe the price isn't a market price, it's the family price. So we do look at the contract, but the contract doesn't drive our analysis or our market value. It's just one of the tools that we use, because looking at the contract, it gives us an idea. Okay, you know what? Somebody is willing to pay this price. Okay, and that's just one of the things that one of the pieces of data that I'm using to analyze. If I have a contract that's for $200,000, but all of my comparable sales are $600,000, well, you know what? This person who's selling it is willing to accept $200,000, but based on the criteria of my subject, the market says that it's worth $600,000. The market opinion of the property is $600,000, not necessarily exactly what's on the contract. So I made it that drastic so people can see the difference. Like, yes, the contract doesn't drive the price. The market still drives the price. Sometimes it can be a difference of $1,000. And, we've had agents, realtors, banks, you can't just bump the number. No, I can't bump the number because I didn't come up with the number. The market came up with the number. So if the market says it's 624, it doesn't matter that the sales price is 625. It's 624. And again, you have to remember, we're protecting the average buyer. So once we start playing footsies with the numbers, now this is where appraisal bias comes in. Oh, you know what? I like Devin. Like you said, he's a veteran, blah, 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 divorcee. We went to the same school. I'll bump it up 5,000. You know what? I don't like Devin. He smells like fish. I'm going to bump it down 50,000. That's why when we can go strictly by the data, it takes my opinion, my personal opinion, out of the equation. And that's the way that we can rid appraisals of bias, when you take my personal opinion out of it and it's strictly data driven. So that's why even if it's $1,000, it doesn't matter. That's not what the market said. An example where I gave it was 210 contract price and 600 market. Yeah, you see that because it's a huge number. It could also be as small as $1,000, and literally that's happened often. The market didn't say it, so I can't say what the market didn't say. All I am is a history teacher. I'm just telling you what the market says. I don't make the market. I just interpret the market.
Let me. So I do have one more question. You mentioned that. So I know you noticed you mentioned. Oh, what's that?
I said, this is your second last question.
I do that a lot. This may be my the last question.
Hey,
Too,
you can ask all the questions you want. No problem.
But so, so you mentioned you got in the industry back in 2004,
2005.
2005. So, I was not in the industry in 2005, but one thing I heard back then was, and I'm not asking anything you did directly, but I heard that like lenders, realtors, appraisers, they had a lot more undue influence on the price back then. Like back then, did you have experience with folks like encouraging you or nudging you to like? Because I know there weren't the barriers that exist today when we talk about the barriers between like an appraiser or a lender talking directly to an appraiser. Like, did that happen back then where appraiser or a lender be like, hey, we really need $300,000, and then
Oh, definitely. I mean, it happened back then. It still happens today.
okay.
It doesn't happen as much. I mean, but back then, definitely, the reason why they came up with appraisal management companies and basically kept the correspondence between the appraiser and whoever the lender is because they don't want the lender to influence the appraiser. So back then, I would hear people say, hey, I really need 350 on this number. And this is coming directly from the lender.
Mm-hmm.
And, oftentimes if you don't meet their number, well, now you're not getting all the work. So as me, and not literally me, but I'm just saying in an example of, I know that if I don't meet their number, then I'm not going to get any work. Am I going to maybe push the number a little bit because, I got to pay my mortgage, I got to put food on my table? I might do that. And so, yes, it did happen more so back then than it does now. Again, there are always going to be bad apples in anything. And so does it kind of maybe still happen now? Maybe, but it's definitely not like it was before. I mean, you get to a property and the realtor would say, this is the number. And basically, they just want you to rubber stamp what they said. But again, homeowners need to understand that it's not the appraiser's job to rubber stamp a mistake made by the investor or the realtor. And just because they put a bad sales price, it's not my job now to go and make their bad sales price legit. So that's kind of what happened before. Because you talking about I would appraise the same house like 3 times in 3 months. I mean, people were refinancing over and over, and the values literally were going up at a clip of 1, 2, 5, 10%, 20, 30, $50,000 in the span of a couple of months. It was crazy.
Yeah.
And so, yes, people and lenders and realtors and, homeowners basically telling you how to do your job. And that did happen a lot.
Okay. Thank you. That was the actual last question. Appreciate you two's time. I don't know if you
we
guys
got room for one more last question.
Well, yeah, that was going to ask about your Cowboys, but no questions. No questions about that. But you guys have any parting shots? How to get in contact with you? Any last words as far as anything we talked about, or anything I didn't even maybe things to bring up?
Well, actually, I do. Devin knows we here at Beltway Appraisals in the Maryland, DC, Virginia area, we really pride ourselves on educating consumers. And consumers are anybody who uses the appraisal industry. And so if you come in contact with an appraiser, somebody who comes to your home, they're doing an appraisal inspection, ask them questions. Feel free. If the person gets offended and they're upset, you know what? That's on them. But you don't often get a chance to interact with an appraiser. So ask them questions. What are you looking for? Does this feature add or have a positive or negative effect on my property? Ask them what's the criteria that they use to do their search. Find out how long they've been in the industry. See if maybe they're a designated member from the Appraisal Institute. All of these things show that somebody is really competent in what they're doing. You don't want somebody who's literally just started 2 days ago. They're from Michigan, but they just moved to DC 3 weeks ago. Now, all of a sudden, they're just doing appraisals in your area. Ask them, is it possible once I get the report back, if I don't understand something, can I explain it to you? These are all things that I bring up to homeowners when I'm in the house. Hey, you can ask me anything you want.
Okay.
You can provide them with data. When I say data, I mean, what are the things that you did to your house, regardless if they use it or not, provide it to them. Because you might not know what a feature is that might have a positive effect on your property. You know, you got the roof done, you did your hot water tank. It doesn't matter what it is. Just let them decide if it's good or not.
Okay. Oh, okay. So you do
And
recommend like a realtor or
a fact
homeowner like,
sheet,
dropping like that packet on the table saying, hey, these are some upgrades, or
even for realtors, I would provide the appraiser with sales. You know,
okay.
give us an idea. Again, it doesn't mean that I'm going to use them, but it gives me an idea of, okay, what you looked at. Because as Devin knows, we've come across that attached row house in DC. I had a litigation case where the attorney was telling me what I should appraise the property at. And she said, well, these are the sales that the person used to come up with the value. Again, my subject is an attached row house in DC. They use detached houses as sales. Now, again, that's not the same buyer, that's not the same market. Double the square footage of the property. Because they like the sales price, they said, well, you know what, just use the sales price. Again, that's not the criteria, is not just the sales price. So if you're the agent, you're the homeowner, maybe you have access to MLS in your local area, or even you just went on Reddit, you know what, hey, these are the houses that sold in my neighborhood, and that'll give you an idea of what it should be. At least a price range. Doesn't mean it exactly, but it gives them an idea. So always provide the appraiser with as much data as possible, because sometimes we might not be able to come up with the information based on how it's entered in the MLS. Sometimes we might be looking for a specific style like colonial, but say the person decided to use the word split foyer when it really was a colonial. Well, I might not come up with that property that's right next door because it was entered into our database incorrect. And so if you give that to me ahead of time, I can say, well, you know what? Oh, okay, this is what they use. You know what? Let me do some searches for this property type, or whatever it is. It's always easier to data before they do the report versus after.
Yeah.
Now, once you get the report back and there's something about that you don't like, you don't go to the state, because that's further down the line. You go directly back to your lender and you request your lender, hey, I have a question about the report, and you ask. And oftentimes what the lender will do is they'll just turn around those questions to appraiser, and their appraiser will respond to those requests. Oftentimes it will be included in the report. And if they don't answer the questions that you like, shoot them back other questions. It's our job, again, to educate the market. And if you have a question, take it to your lender turn around and they take it to the appraiser. So don't feel, insulting to the appraiser.
Mhm.
Okay, thank you. You have any last words, Devin, or?
No, just thank you for having us on here. I don't know if I should give out the office number, Jack, online, but no, certainly Beltway Appraisals. You can certainly be able to reach us there. And I know my Jack to get his own personal Instagram with all of his experience. My personal Instagram is _husband appraiser. And feel free to contact me, contact Jack whenever. We are open, and we look forward to just educating even more everywhere, down to the colleges, local colleges.
Okay.
So, we really have some good plans, and we have an upcoming, the Appraisal Foundation is actually using both of us as a highlight for an upcoming video series that should be releasing this October. And it's on the training and supervisory experience, and also focusing on in terms of bringing more diversity into the industry. So we have really been putting our foot down in the industry. Oh, and also Jack is too modest. He is a recent chosen secretary of the DC Metropolitan chapter of the Appraisal Institute. So he is certainly has made his name in the industry. And like I said, I'm just thankful to be working up underneath him. I take pride in having experience with a Black appraiser. And we just look forward to making this industry what it's supposed to stand for. And just thank you so much, Dave. And please don't hesitate to be able to let us know if we can ever come back on.
Yeah, hey, we're always trying to educate. So, you ever have events, you just, want to pick our brains, we have no problem. Again, Beltway Appraisals, we're here in the Maryland, Virginia, DC market. We do high-end properties. We do VA. We're on the VA panel. We do court litigation. We do work for the state of Maryland. We do work for the different counties. So, we're well-rounded. But the real big focal point of our company is educating consumers about the appraisal process, because your home is often your biggest asset.
Yeah.
Yes.
Most definitely, thank you. And I have all the contact information below, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening to the podcast. So, one more question. So, so scenario. So, I'm used to, from a realtor, someone, basically the lender reaches out to the AMC. But what are scenarios where the home buyer would not home buyer, but like the customer would reach directly out to you? You mentioned like litigation issues, or what's some scenarios where like a customer will call you directly?
So I've had examples of where somebody thought,
I'm still here, so I'll keep going.
Okay, we've had examples of where somebody wanted to refute an appraisal. So they basically would hire us to take a look at the appraisal and see what the market data shows, and we will do that for consumers. We do, estate work. Attorneys will reach out to us directly to do that kind of work. Homeowners, sometimes they had an appraisal done for a lender, and they have data that shows that it should be of a different number. We'll research that, and we will work with them with that. So people can contact us directly on a lot of different things. They had unfortunate death in a family from 2 years ago, and they have the property in probate, and they need work done with that. We do that. People are trying to get bought out for divorce cases. So there are a lot of different ways that people who aren't lenders will utilize our services.
Okay, appreciate that. Once again, thank you both for coming on A Wealth of Knowledge. And as always, buy land, rumor has it they're not making any more of it.